All right, let's dive into a pretty wild market breakdown. And to do it, we're actually going to lean on an analysis that was put together entirely by digital minds. It's a deep dive that really makes you wonder, has our world gotten so complex that only an AI can see the cracks before they shatter everything? So, our story kicks off with a puzzle, one that seems to fly in the face of everything we know about finance. You've got this massive, glaring opportunity, $13 of pure profit per ounce of silver just sitting on the table, and nobody was taking it. The big question is, why? Okay, so here's what was happening back in late 2025. A huge price gap, a chasm really, opened up between the paper price of silver on the COMEX in the West and the actual physical price over on the Shanghai Exchange in the East. Now, in any normal functioning market, traders would have jumped on that and closed the gap in a matter of days, but they couldn't. Something was physically broken in the system. To figure out why, you have to look past the trading screens and into the real physical world. Because that's where the industrial backbone of the entire silver supply chain was, well, it was suddenly and catastrophically snapping in half. And it happened unbelievably fast. We're talking about a 21-day window. In just 3 weeks, three of the world's most important silver refiners, the places that actually turn raw ore into usable metal, they all just stopped normal operations. And the reasons they gave? Things like scheduled maintenance, right at the busiest, most critical time of the year. Yeah, right. And the scale of this shock is what's so staggering. Think about this. Nearly 10% of the whole world's ability to produce market-ready silver just poof, vanished. This wasn't some minor disruption. This was like a systemic heart attack. And you have to understand, these weren't small-time players we're talking about. Johnson Matthey in North America, Metalor over in Switzerland, Heraeus in Germany, these are absolutely essential cogs in the global machine. For them all to fail at the same time, that was a massive red flag that there was a much, much deeper problem. So the big question, why did they all fail at once? This was no coincidence. It was a perfect storm, literally the convergence of four huge pressures that all slammed into a system that had zero backup plan, all at the exact same moment. What we're looking at here is a cascading failure. You had this incredibly fragile system running on razor-thin margins with no wiggle room, and it just got hammered by four interconnected problems that had been building up for years. Any one of these would have been bad enough, but all four together, it was catastrophic. So first up was the feedstock shortage. Put simply, the refiners were being starved of raw material. Output from primary silver mines was already going down. And here's the kicker. Most silver is actually a byproduct of copper mining. So when copper prices fell, mines cut back on copper production, which automatically choked off the silver supply, no matter how high the price of silver went. Second, the energy crisis. Oh man, the European refiners like Metalor and Heraeus got absolutely crushed by this. Their natural gas prices were 6, 7, even 8 times higher than what their entire business model was built on. It just became economically impossible to even run the furnaces. Third problem, the environmental trap. New emission standards in both the US and the EU basically created this horrible catch-22. You either had to spend millions on upgrades, which means shutting down for a long time, or you just cut your production way down to stay under the new legal limits. Either way, capacity goes offline. And finally, the last piece of the puzzle, people. The specialized workforce you needed to run these complex plants was retiring way faster than they could be replaced. I mean, we're talking about a 3-year training pipeline for skilled metallurgists. You can't just throw money at that problem and fix it tomorrow. There simply weren't enough qualified people to run the machines. Okay, so here's the crucial point. When you add all that up, this complete physical collapse of the supply chain, it revealed that the paper price you see on exchanges like the COMEX was basically a fantasy. The number on the screen became totally disconnected from the actual price to get metal in your hands. So while the screens were showing a price around $71, if you were a manufacturer, a company that desperately needed physical silver to keep your solar panel or electronics factories running, you were first to pay almost $90 an ounce on the real market. That 25% gap, that's the market screaming that the paper price is a lie. And, of course, that desperation triggered a massive run on the vaults that are supposed to back all those paper contracts. In just 3 weeks, 25 million ounces of physical silver were yanked out of the COMEX registered inventory as companies scrambled to get their hands on any available metal they could find. And this, right here, gets to the absolute heart of the crisis. This quote says it all. When offering more and more money doesn't actually get you more supply, it means the price on the screen is meaningless. The physical stuff, it just isn't there to be bought at any price. So that brings us to the all-important question. What happens next? How does this get resolved? Well, it all depends on how quickly, or even if, that lost refining capacity can come back online. And there are basically 3 ways this could play out. Now, the most likely path forward, sitting at a 55% probability, is what's called an extended disruption. Basically, the refineries come back online, but slowly and at a lower capacity. The physical shortage continues, which means the paper price on the COMEX is slowly and painfully forced to rise up to meet the real-world physical price. The fantasy finally has to confront reality. And if you want to see which of these scenarios is actually unfolding, these are the 5 key markers you need to watch. Keep a very close eye on the inventory levels in those COMEX vaults and that price gap between Shanghai and COMEX. Those are the vital signs of the entire system. Which brings us all the way back to where we started with this really provocative thought. This whole analysis, piecing together these 4 different constraints before the collapse, it was done by an AI sifting through mountains of data. It makes you wonder, when our global supply chains get this interconnected, this brittle, do we now need a non-human perspective just to see the disaster before it strikes?